With each generation, the Volkswagen Golf GTI becomes more polished, but not every evolution of this Gran Turismo Inezione or GTI model has proved to be a real step forward. This Mark 8 model, though, might be, combining new technology with advanced chassis dynamics, plus a little of the original GTI DNA still remains. Sounds promising.
At first glance here, not much seems to have changed. The EA888 Series 2-litre TSI engine is lifted from the performance spec version of the previous generation model, and it develops the same output, 245 PS, and much the same performance stats too. Rest to 62 in 6.3 seconds en route to 155 miles an hour. There's also the same manual or 7-speed DSG automatic gearbox options, and as before, an extra cost DCC, dynamic chassis control, adaptive damping system is available. But look closer at what's being served up here. Recent improvements by key rivals meant that Chief Engineer Jürgen Puchler and his development team really knew that they had to enhance this car's low-speed agility, its high-speed stability, and its driver feedback. And as you'll discover in less than half a mile on your favourite twisting secondary road piece of tarmac, they have. The steering, which really disappointed us on the previous generation model, is now incisive and communicative. The brakes are brilliant. The Porsche developed DSG automatic gearbox is rifle crack quick through the ratios. Body roll is brilliantly judged, and dry weather grip at speed through the turns seems almost endless. There are plenty of reasons for those improvements. The previously optional XDS Plus electronically controlled locking front differential is now standard, and that's been tuned to activate more effectively to improve mid-corner traction. Plus, Volkswagen has added a completely new variable ratio steering rack with responses quickened by up to 7% for more incisive turn-in bite. Orchestrating all these elements together is a new, faster acting and more comprehensive vehicle dynamics manager setup, which oversees just about every dynamic variable and then alters the drivetrain, the suspension and the steering to get the nose into and around each turn more quickly and more safely. On top of that, spring rates have been increased by 5% at the front and 15% at the rear. The DSG 7-speed automatic gearbox that we're trying today is a different, sharper reacting shift-by-wire setup. And the DCC, dynamic chassis control adaptive damping system, that's a must-have option, has been completely reconfigured to be far more tunable. So a keen owner could set up his GTI just as a race driver would set up his race car. On the subject of damping, the ride is now a bit firmer than before, but this Golf GTI is still better than its rivals at not being a hot hatch, when not being a hot hatch is exactly what's required. When the rain's pouring down, when a long highway trip is beckoning, when urban driving is required, or when you simply can't be bothered with red mist modes. At which point you might also find that this is the most efficient car in its class. It's capable of returning impressive WLTP stats for a hot hatch of this capability. In this DSG Auto form, that means up to 38.2 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 168 grams per kilometre of CO2. But when you are ready to drive this GTI in the way that it was designed to be driven, this can be an astonishingly rapid back road brawler, Jekyll and Hyde in one immaculately fashioned Wolfsburg package, and therein lies the joy of this car. So, what do you think? Well, because with this 8th generation GTI model, styling chief Klaus Bischoff and his team had to keep basically the same structure as before, they were a little limited in how much could be done to fundamentally change the design of this car. It's now only offered in this single 5-door hatch body style. Within those constraints though, quite a lot has been done here, much of it aimed at creating a low visual centre of gravity, and that's primarily achieved through the wide air intakes at the front and the striking shoulder line. So a mixture of both old and new for the outside. Will the same be true for the cabin? Let's see. Well, there's certainly plenty here that will be familiar to Golf GTI regulars, like the GTI Sport seats in tartan with their black side bolsters and the 3 silver double spokes on the dished sport steering wheel. If this were a manual model, we'd have a dimpled golf ball style gear knob too. Despite this though, the overriding impression for loyal owners will probably be of just how different everything is here. As on an ordinary Golf, this comes courtesy of the brand's so-called InnoVision cockpit, which fuses a 10.25-inch digital instrument binnacle screen with a 10-inch centre dash screen. Let's start with this Digital Cockpit Pro instrument binnacle screen. The virtual gauges are embellished in this hot hatch model with stylised GTI branding and a smart honeycomb background. This display is a bit smaller than the virtual cockpit screen you'll get in a rival Audi S3, but it works in much the same way. A view button on the steering wheel here offers a choice of 4 graphic layouts. Anything this instrument binnacle display can't tell you, and much that it can, will be covered off by that 10-inch centre dash touchscreen we mentioned earlier. This is a decent step forward from the composition media monitor that was fitted to the previous generation model. That already was better than rival setups. Now this replacement Discover media navigation system puts this Golf even further beyond its competitors' reach in this regard when it comes to clarity and ease of use. You'll have to get used to a few things about it though, primarily the curious slider at the bottom of the screen for volume control. Not everyone likes that. Enough with screens and digitalisation. What else do you need to know here? Apart from the fact that, as usual on a Golf, build quality is impeccable. Maybe that the ergonomics are predictably faultless too, and that the seats, which come with integrated headrests and lumbar adjustment, are brilliantly supportive. The combination of these tiny front quarter lights here and slim A-pillars mean good frontal vision too. Over the shoulder vision, well, that's not quite as good. The large C-pillars rather get in the way, so it's just as well that rear parking sensors are standard fit. A rear view camera though isn't. So let's take a seat in the rear of this now 5-door only model. Thanks to the extra 16mm of length between the wheels with this Mark 8 design, there's a fraction more legroom than there was before. So a pair of 6-foot adults could now be accommodated reasonably here, providing front seat occupants don't slide their seats fully back. Let's finish off this segment by taking a look in the boot, the catch for which, as usual, is activated by pushing this central tailgate badge. Now your Volkswagen salesperson might reference the fact that this 381 litre space is 40 litres more than you'll get in a rival Ford Focus ST. Pushing forward the conventional 60/40 split rear bench does give you a 1237 litre load area, which will be virtually flat if you have the boot floor in its upper position. Will we ever see a Golf GTI quite like this one ever again? Well, with performance models increasingly adopting various forms of electrification, we probably won't, so let's enjoy this 8th generation model while we can. The very first generation version set out to define a fundamental standard for performance that was more precise than any other compact car. So it is here. Long after the novelty of some rivals has worn off, this GTI will always feel a class act. Crucially though, it'll now also be a very entertaining one.